What's up, everybody? Welcome to the State of Twist, episode 139, a regular YouTube video web series podcast thingy. My name is Meowth, and as usual, I'm joined by my two good friends and co-hosts, Roffle and Corbett. Guys, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing pretty good. You know, we had the introduction to the Twist format, and I can say very confidently and enthusiastically that Twist is saved.
Did Twist need saving? That's what I need to know. What was the problem with Twist, Roffle?
It didn't exist before, and now it does.
Oh.
So it's been saved.
Yes. You know what? That's great. We have a new format. We all got to try it on. I'm trying to convert days in my head, like which day was which. Thursday.
It was Thursday, yeah.
And it'll be released sometime this week, before the end of the season, but unconfirmed date, I believe, at this point.
After the release of this podcast, before the end of the month, at some point in between. Yeah. Corb got time all twisted there. Couldn't remember days. But yeah, today we're going to be kind of pivoting away from WoW content to talk about brand new formats. So for those of you guys that are living under a rock, Hearthstone has announced a brand new way to play Constructed Hearthstone. So now we are going to have Standard, we're going to have Wild, and we're going to have Twist. And so Twist is a rotating constructed format, something I think people have been asking for a very long time. And Hearthstone's got a unique take on this where it's gonna rotate every couple of months. And so for the very first season of Twist, from now until the end of July, the format is going to be called New Age, which is basically all cards from Ashes of Outland forward, with a spicy twist of no neutrals, which has been really cool. Lots of cool ideas. And we're going to dive into kind of the specifics on what that might mean. But I just want to get you guys' initial impression. How excited are you guys about Twist and kind of this idea of a rotating constructed format?
Broadly speaking, I'm very excited. It's something that I've been kind of skeptical about for a while because to me personally, just like a rotating set of different expansions feels less appealing than what Twist was announced as, which is, yes, that rotating set of expansion blocks, but also like different rule sets associated with that. So that different rule sets aspect is more interesting to me because, like, you know, even month-long blocks may get stale if you have some like blocks that are repeatedly used, or even if they all incorporate the core set, they might feel a little bit stale. But the kind of the kink of the different rule sets really appeals to me personally, and I hope they, you know, get creative with the different rule set changes that they're able to implement. I feel like there are a lot of different levers that they can pull in a lot of different directions to make that a lot more interesting, especially with like the incorporation of different deck sizes with Renathal, different health pool sizes also unlocked by Renathal. I feel like that can give a lot of possibilities. This first season seems kind of basic, and like I think that was done intentionally. Like, I think it's meant to appeal to as broad an audience as possible, and be as approachable as possible. So the way that they did that was by making it more current sets, so that like standard focused gamers or people that have, you know, joined Hearthstone in the past now 3 years or 4 years or so will have a decent amount of the card pool in order to get there. And then it's a very simple, again, approachable rule set of no neutrals. Now, that said, for a highly engaged player like myself, especially a wild player, it feels a little samey. So this first season isn't like super appealing to me, but like the concept, the idea of Twist moving forward is really something that I'm optimistic about and have high hopes for.
Yeah, I would definitely echo all of that. Both the broad general excitement that I have, but also the fact that this format is going to feel a little wild 2.0, a little wild junior, it seems like. That said, yeah, it does make a ton of sense. Just to try and create the lowest barrier of entry for everyone. Not just because they're just like cards that people might own recently, but cards that they're familiar with. like cards that they know from the past year or two, so that way if they do have like recent attachment to decks, they can go revisit those in Twist. It was very interesting, the pre-release stream, the different experiences that I think different sections of the player base kind of had with the pre-release stream. Obviously kind of throwing a whole bunch of different folks with different backgrounds in the game together. And it was just fun seeing what I was trying to do, what some of the more maybe wild focused players were doing, and then some of the more perhaps casual or standard, or even like no constructed background at all players were trying in Twist at the pre-release streams.
I think the players that had any pulse on the wild metagame like whatsoever were immediately at a huge advantage, because when the Twist was announced, everybody's like, oh, Pure Paladin's going to be bonkers, and it's already a deck in Standard, and everybody was looking at their two of the like top 4 or 5 wild decks, and they're like, these are just entirely playable, including the best deck in the format. And neither of those are Pure Paladin. I don't think Pure Paladin is like a top 4, top 5 deck in the Twist format, having played it myself. I don't think you want to be doing anything board-based in the format right now, which I do fear could be a turnoff for, a pretty substantial number of players, because like that was one of the biggest criticisms of the United and Stormwind metagame. And I feel like we're kind of revisiting at least that play style, albeit only for hopefully about a month or so, because I have concerns about the rule set, not because I don't understand why they did it, but because of just the nature of the play style that's associated with those sets.
Yeah, I had a big Twitter thread before the stream went live, and like I always open it being kind of like wrong and stuff, because people get stuff wrong all the time when you do like review content. You guys just have to look at our top 5 cards. No,
except for us, we never get it wrong.
But the format was like, I expected something very off-board and very combo heavy. It's even more than I expected, and I think the best decks are even better than I expected. So we'll probably dive into the specifics of what we tried and felt during the format. But Meowth, you haven't really given your thoughts yet on Twist as a big concept either.
No, I mean, I echo a lot of the sentiments you guys have of like, I love the idea. I guess I should preface this as I am an entrenched Hearthstone player. I'm an enfranchised Hearthstone player. I have a lot of the cards, and I spend a lot of time playing Hearthstone. And so, as somebody who like always wants something new, Twist is going to be something that's great for me. I have heard some comments online about how this is going to be really hard for like people to keep up with, especially for players that had to disenchant a lot of their wild cards. And like, I hear that. I completely understand that. And I think Blizzard is going to be doing something, hopefully, to at least make that easier. But speaking from my experience, I think this is amazing. I think this is great. I'm really excited. I think it's also important to say, before we dive into like our worries about decks and things like that, they have said that they will be balancing Twist, right? They're not going to do something and just leave it out there for like 2 months before the format changes. They have said that they'll step in, they'll make changes. Less frequently within Standard, but more frequently than Wild, which is not a very high bar when they say more frequently than Wild, because they don't make very many changes. But
it's a big chasm. Yeah,
it's a big gap, because they make 40 changes an expansion for Standard and 1 for Wild, so it could be anywhere in between. But when we start diving into decks and the format and things like that, if it ends up being not super great, I'm sure that they're gonna say they don't want the first thing to have a super negative sentiment attached. I feel like I think they'll step in and make changes if they feel like it's necessary.
The reason that that I hesitate is that if you asked, I mean, every Wild player knew what was going to happen going into this, and so it's a very predictable outcome for those of us that like, again, have even just a remote pulse on the current Wild metagame. It's like, oh, these 2 decks are going to dominate, and then
okay. I mean, but we said that about like Twig Sphere. They released it about Instrument Tech with Twig Sphere, right? They're not gonna do something preemptively, I would assume, right? Like, they're never going to. Maybe that's naive of me to think that, like, in a week after Twist or 2 weeks after we have Twist, we'll go ahead and spoil Quest Demon Hunter and Quest Druid. If they're, like, the two best decks by a mile, I'm sure that they'll step in and do something, right? Maybe.
I would hope so. Otherwise, like, so this is my fear of the format, is that because even though this is the most approachable season that they'll probably ever have in terms of, like, not necessarily super entrenched, specifically wild Hearthstone players, that some people will try it, have a really poor experience, and think that that's what Twist is always going to be. So, like, that's my concern. I think that there is the potential to have, like, day one Demon Hunter type dominance within the format, or like a Galakron Shaman type dominance within the format, that just becomes very stifling for, a variety of, or any other deck, as well as just because it's, a new and therefore more optional game mode, just completely turns people off to the format in its entirety. So if they are going to take action, I would certainly hope it's not a week, given, like, the potential for the outlier decks that we have in the format.
I would be surprised if it was as fast as a week, just because.
No, me too.
Yeah, so, like, it'll probably be closer to 2. Like, that's typically what they do with standard. I think my concern, and again, I do want to just, like, just mention that it is a little, like, I don't want to be too doomer about, like, being predictive about a format that I haven't even played, because, like, people do get up in arms preemptively, and are kind of often looking for a reason to get mad. That said, I am gonna make a prediction on, like, what I think the format is. Like, that's what we're here to talk about, so whatever. My issue is that I think that it's both decks, but it's mostly Druid. Like, I think Druid is clearly the best by far, and I wouldn't be shocked in the slightest if we looked at one of the most broken decks of all time. Like a day one Demon Hunter situation in the format. And my issue is that even if you, like, address that and Demon Hunter, I don't think the fundamental feel of the format is going to change very much. I think that this is a format where we have layers upon layers of the same feeling gameplay, right? Where it isn't just like the Druid offboard damage. It isn't like the Demon Hunter blowout swing turns. It's like the Poison Rogue behind that is all just, like, bonking over the top and killing people turn 5. And if you nerf that, then it's like, oh, then there's the Quest Hunter, and then there's the Quest Shaman, and then there's the Quest Warlock, and everyone loves Quest Warlock. I actually like Quest Warlock, but whatever. But I think that there's, like, this layer upon layer of the similar type of gameplay. It slows down, but I think that the people that have resentment towards Stormwind, you can't undo that. You can't just remove the Stormwind by removing 2 of the quests. There's, like, a lot going on there, and aggro feels so underpowered. Just from deck building, like, it is feeling like, because a deck like Shadow Priest in Wild gets absolutely farmed by Druid, and the Shadow Priest cops a much bigger hit than the Druid does. So it's like, it's difficult to see where these premier aggro decks are coming from. Like Roffle was talking about with Pure Paladin, like, he doesn't want to do anything with Pure Paladin. Pure Paladin is the type of deck that you just have to build. You're building very standard-esque aggro versus wild combo. And even if you nerf the first 2 stuff, I do think that there will still potentially be play pattern concerns, which is an issue, because, like Rob was saying, and you want to engage players this month the most. And I hope that I'm wrong and that things turn out fun.
I will say all I heard from that was ban quest lines, because all the decks you can
kind of
like, messing, but
no, I think what we need is the daily Kibler scheduled tweet to come back and letting Ixar, who's working to Riot now, know that quests stink. No, I think that's at least a part of it, but, like, because aggro is so anemic, there's no control decks that are you can play either. And the control decks, because the control decks don't have disruption to offset the over the top damage, so they're just going to get bonked by whatever, quest line, druid, or weapon rogue. Honestly, like again, I don't want to sound too doomer either, but like I've just kind of resigned myself and am hoping for a situation similar to like what we had with duels, where people bounce off of it early because it wasn't like super, aligned with where it is now and super tuned in both in balance and in like just the general gameplay experience, where people bounce off of it, they do big overhaul, and maybe in some people come back and realize it's fun again. Like that's kind of where I'm at right now, just because of my fear of where the meta was going. And I don't say this lightly either, because like I don't think you can put too much stock in typical theory crafting streams. I don't think you can predict accurately where the metagame is necessarily going to go in most cases. But when two very nearly complete meta decks from the wild format are up against decks with limited card pools that are like barely playable in the standard format, that's a huge power discrepancy. And like that's where my concern is. I feel like there's legitimate concern to be had there.
Roffle, but surely, like, if we all saw this coming, then it means the team saw it coming, and they've tested it, and they know it's all balanced, and it'll be good.
I don't think that the team has as strong a pulse on the wild metagame as we do. Is I think that the issue there.
They listen to us every week. They know exactly what's going on in the wild format. Surely, no.
Yeah, they'll comment down below, right?
I will be a lot more positive. I believe that even if questline demon, it's hard for me to do this. So I have to make sure that I'm wording this properly. Hard to be positive about the meta right now. Predicted meta. I think that I am worried that the gameplay of the questline Demon Hunter and Druid, like you guys have said, will turn people off from Twist, right? And even if they come in a week and balance things, I feel like you're going to lose that immediate momentum that you had with it. But I will also say that even if this set is not the greatest, right? Like this format for Twist is not the greatest. That's part of the beauty of Twist, right? Is that the next time the format changes, it's going to be completely different, and it might have a completely different metagame that will suck people back in, right? I think that's the whole upside and the whole point of a format like Twist, where you're going to have people like Corb that love quest lines, and they're going to be, I'm projecting here, you're going to love this format because it's questline central, and you're going to have people that don't love them, and they're going to, I won't play Twist, for that month, and then I'll come back when the format changes and things like that. And I think that's kind of the whole beauty of it.
No, I agree, and that's exactly what I'm talking about. It was very unlikely that this first one, just with the rule set, with the card pool, was ever going to appeal for me. Even if they preemptively banned questlines, it likely was not going to appeal to me personally, just because it's in this midway point of like not quite standard but not quite wild. So I feel like needlessly limited without much potential for creative deck building, when it's like we're mostly just going back to last year's standard plus some additional cards. So like it was never going to appeal to me. My concern is that the metagame becomes so bad that it makes people think that Twist will just always be this way. I'm not concerned for me. Like that's not where my criticism is. This format was likely always going to bounce off me a little bit. My concern is for the whatever player base there could be that gets turned off from the format in its entirety. Like how many people watch like one game of Wild or see one game of Big Priest or saw one clip of Snip Lock and were just like, yeah, I'm never playing Wild, and don't even give it a try because of what they perceive it to be. That very same thing could easily happen to Twist as a result of like one deck being so hyper dominant.
We could also be overly projecting the how competitive the format is, like talking about these top tier decks, seeing tons of play. It could very well be a thing that Twist is even more casual than Wild, like if you go down to X8 and below MMR and Wild, you're seeing Renathal piles and Renos and Jank and Casino. Like there's a whole bunch of weird stuff, and like maybe Twist is even more of that. Like just because there is like even less info out there, and people are very much willing to try old stuff, and with this new weird rule set. So it could definitely be a case where this only affects the very top percentage of players, and it's very fun for a lot of other users.
That's actually a fairly good point. I think down ladder, like Beer Paladin, probably will be pretty dominant because people will just play their standard list and do great with it. I think that there also may be some like accidental like weirdness because there's no like everybody's starting fresh, right? So you're going to get a lot of questline druids queuing into those same piles of cards and just bullying them, and then like this being the first month, it's going to also create some awkwardness in terms of matchups and like the perceived metagame as well. So maybe that will hide some of it. Maybe it'll expose it. I don't actually know.
I'm very excited for my first 20 games. I don't know what I'm going to play against, but like I expect to see a lot of Dr. Boom on 7. Or well,
you cannot play against a Dr. Boom on 7.
You're sounding awful. You're sounding an awful lot like my chat right now, Corb.
sorry. I was trying to think of an unplayable card, but yeah, I only got Dr. Boom on 7 on the Heroic Brawls DM, which I lost to. But yeah, I expect to see some weird stuff.
Yeah. So I mean, just to clarify a couple of the things. So MMR is completely brand new for this format. So everybody's starting from the same scratch, regardless if you're like 11x in standard or wild or whatever. Everybody starts at 2 stars. You run out once you hit bronze 5. So it's gonna be, who knows? You might be queuing into the jank piles. You might be queuing into 30 questline druids in a row. Who knows? I'm interested because I'm assuming it's coming out this week, either on Tuesday or Thursday. That means it's like 3 days or 4 days or 2 days of people trying to hit legend and get that 11-star bonus by the end of the month. And I wonder how many people are actually going to do it. How many crazy people out there? Yeah, there's one right there raising his hand. Yeah, so I do want to kind of wrap this little part up. I want to make sure.
Before you do, though, there is one more positive note to be had about this. And, the devs aren't the only ones that are completely clueless, or not completely clueless, are less in tune with what the wild metagame is. Your average standard gamer is actually completely clueless. So you, listener of State of the Wild podcast, have a massive advantage going into this format, because most people do think that Beer Paladin is going to be bonkers, and you can just dome them with Questline Druid if you do want to be one of those 11x gamers in the first season.
There were many takes on Twitter where it was the epitome of the oh honey, you don't know what
I actually saw that comment verbatim in the wild thread. Where, in the standard subreddit, someone posted a picture of like, I know what's gonna be the best deck, and it was just a picture of standard Pure Paladin, and then the wild subreddit linked to it, and they just literally said, "Oh, my sweet summer child,"
or it's the meme of does he know?
Does he know? Yeah. One thing I will say, the rule set. We're kind of talking like we've been a little bit negative probably so far. Something that I do want to highlight is the no neutral thing and how cool that is with Discover. Like that is a very exciting custom rule, and I really like the gameplay implications from that. And I hope that's the type of thing that opens up in the future with other rule sets, like changing how you use your cards is a big potential appeal of Twist, right? Like not just repackaging old cards in ways that we didn't see before, but or like even restricting rules with your old cards, but kind of like changing the way that you use old cards is very exciting. So the Discover pools get very unique and very weird, and very strong in a lot of cases.
No, this is something that going in, I think I saw on your thread that you mentioned specifically, and I was admittedly kind of dismissive of it. I'm like, oh yeah, that's neat, but like they're more consistent, but it's not really worth building a deck around. Or like maybe there's some goofy combos that you can do. I got hit by a quick Holla by Mark off of Drakefire Amulet, and I'm like, yeah, that's cute. because it was a Discover pool, I'm like, oh yeah, I see this coming, and so then it happened, and I'm like, yeah, that's cool, but like, how consistent is that in terms of like being able to survive long enough to pull it off? But then I got hit by Meowth with a Glug off of Charge Call, and I was just like, okay, now I'm starting to see the potential here when you can kind of manipulate it. I think Charge Call is maybe the best example of that, because you have like 7, 8, and 9 are all great options and situationally very good depending on where you are in the game, and then 10 is just butt and like just horrendously bad. It's always just an 8/8. And so it's like it's this really interesting situation where, instead of just rushing to 10 mana and getting yourself some nice random 10 drops, you're like actually having to think about when you overload, how much you overload, when you stop, you hold cards in situations where you would normally just rip them. And it created really, really interesting play patterns. That was maybe one of the most fun decks that I played, was just a Questline Shaman centered around Charge Call, just because of the interesting play patterns that manipulating the number on Charge Call led to.
Yeah, I mean, just some other examples of cards that get a lot better when you eliminate neutrals was like the Studies cards from Skullman's Academy was the one that we kind of highlighted when Corb and I were going through things. So like in Mage, there are only 4 spell damage minions that you can hit off of, I don't even know the name of the card, Primordial Study something. Yep. So you have a 75% chance of hitting Egwin, which is very powerful when you get to play one in your deck and then have the chance to discover 2 more. And then you just get to play a minion that naturally has +6 spell damage. Is kind of insane. And in Shaman, there's only 3 spell damage minions. So like you always get the 1 mana 3/2, which is really nice when you're playing Quest Shaman. Or in, what's the other one? In Priest, right? Draconic Studies. You have a 75% chance to hit the new, better, and improved Dustbreaker that I can never remember the name of. The 4 mana
Netherdrake.
There you go. The 4 mana 4/4 that AoE's the board. So there's like small things like that, like resizing Pouch in Druid, and in Hunter you can manipulate because there's only 4 0 mana spells. So I think things like that are pretty sweet, and actually make me really, really miss the class Discover bonus. That is the only thing I can think of when I play these cards. I'm just like, wow, imagine if we still had class bonus. These cards would still be playable in Wild, maybe.
Yeah, I had the exact same takeaway as well, because again, even I was admittedly again very dismissive of that, but then when I actually played, I'm like, oh my, feels so good.
But yeah, I did want to make sure that we, in case anybody is listening, hears us talking about this format and then says like, well, why would I want to play Twist? I will say it's a sweet idea. I think just this very specific version, right? New age, no neutrals, might lead to gameplay that's not kind of up your alley, right? And I think that's kind of what I want to take away. And if it's not up your alley, it's going to change. And that's kind of the whole point of the format. It's going to change at the end of July and maybe the next format, right? And they've specified they're gonna do stuff with crazy rules, crazy card pools and things like that. So maybe the next time it'll be up your alley. And it's something that, like, while I'm not super happy with maybe this specific format, like I'm not a big fan of quest lines. Maybe I'm not the most excited. I am still very excited for Twist in general.
Right. So. I think we all are. That's very clear. Despite like what we feel about this format, I think we all are. So I think sense is maybe don't take it too seriously, or if you just want a quick legend, take it super seriously and show those standard gamers what you know.
Yeah. All right.
Seems like 2 good ways to have fun to me.
Or a way to farm your 1,000 Demon Hunter wins that I still don't have.
Same.
I would say Death Knight wins, but let's not talk about Death Knight in this format. Let's not do that. I do want to kind of pivot here and talk a little bit about stuff that we played, and I want to kind of go class by class of like things that we might expect to be powerful for those decks, right? Because we've already kind of talked broadly about the decks we expect to be strong. So let's go a little bit class by class. We're going to skip over Death Knight because Death Knight has 2 expansions worth of cards and has no neutrals, and so I would be very surprised if a playable deck, let alone a good deck, emerged from Death Knight, which is fine because Death Knight's been very powerful in Standard, and I think it's okay if it's twist out. So let's start with Demon Hunter. Questline Demon Hunter, 29 out of 30, the same cards that is in Wild. Missing Tony. People are playing was it Wayward Sage? Some people are playing Meltronics. It doesn't really matter what that 30th card is as long as it doesn't, disrupt you playing Brutes and Wallopers on turn 4 with Mana Burn, which seems like a thing that the deck is still very good at in Twist.
Yeah, I've heard going into it, a lot of people were like, well, without Tony, how do you beat Control? But as we discussed, without aggro, how does Control win? So I think that like just spamming Brutes and Wallopers is probably going to be a fine strategy. Maybe if you're really concerned, you can use the Meltronics to lock out opponents and prevent clears, but I didn't see many board clears when I was playing.
I'm actually a little lower, I think, on Demon Hunter than the consensus. I think that not having the Tony isn't like necessarily the biggest deal, but I do think the way the format is shaping up could be like a bigger deal for the deck. And DH is already like much weaker than Druid, so even if it loses like less total cards, I do think that it doesn't really shrink the gap as much compared to Druid. So yeah, I don't know. Like Ruffle's point about like, look, how much control can actually exist, like that's definitely real, but it wouldn't shock me if Demon Hunter isn't quite as good. That deck is still a deck that has like unplayable hands. It feels like in half the game, or not half the games, but like in a decent portion of games, it just kind of loses to itself. And without that Tony backup plan, like making a whole bunch of Brutes and stuff on turn 4, if you don't have like double mana burn, 1 or 2 of them gets cleared, you can really run out of threats. So it wouldn't shock me, but that said, I'm not saying it's going to be weak. I do expect it to be quite strong. It's just I expect it to be a very clear, gap.
All right. Do you guys think there's anything else powerful that Demon Hunter could potentially do for the people that are not trying to be uber competitive, like maybe Spell Demon Hunter?
Soul? Like Soul Demon Hunter?
Yeah, Fell, Soul, and even just like a regular Outcast, probably fine. But like, I don't know. Regular Outcast seems a little bit less inspiring, just because it's like, it's just a worse version of the Brute deck. I think that Fell might be interesting. You do lose the spell power, which is kind of a big deal for that deck in the with the 1 mana spell, but I don't know. I like Jace.
Yeah, you do still get to go Jason Mana Burn.
It's basically every Demon Hunter deck gets to exist in the format because the entirety of Demon Hunter's card pool is there. So, typically Demon Hunter doesn't use a lot of neutrals to begin with. So just like, Demon Hunter .deck is playable in the format.
Yeah. All right. So if you guys need your 1,000 wins with Demon Hunter still, seems like Twist might be a good opportunity for that. All right, moving into Druid. I think we've already talked about Questline Druid, but Questline Druid is losing, I think, 7 cards was my last count out of the current wild top tier deck. Loses Claw, Secure the Deck, Floop, and Arcane Giants, but you do get to still do the powerful bonk thing with a lot less healing in the format that doesn't have stuff like Reno. Still seems like you still get to do the Owls and Crypt Keepers on 2 and turn 3 because all those cards are still legal. So yeah, I do agree with you guys that Questline Druid does seem like it's going to be the early front runner, but what are we playing in that Questline Demon Hunter to replace the cards that are no longer legal?
Resizing Pouch is like a pretty interesting inclusion. It'll probably be like the weakest option available. Just because, like, look, at its baseline, it's going to be like a 1 mana Pounce or a 1 mana Aquatic Form. That's not amazing, but whatever. You can just shove in, like, Feral Rages, Amulets, like, just stuff that goes face. Planted Evidence, kind of like in Nature Studies. Discover gets a lot better in this format, as we've talked about, compared to Wild, because you lose out on all those terrible, terrible, terrible Wild cards from 2015. But that's pretty much it, Just, like, more damage, more Discover, same game plan.
Yeah, some of those Discover cards that you mentioned also specifically just kind of like find additional copies of the cards already in your deck anyway, because the Discover pool is so narrow. It was a little bit thrown off because during the playtest, the Knights of the Frozen Throne cards are still in there, so you'd still see like an errant Ultimate Infestation or something that you don't actually want to, get that much mana necessarily, or maybe you do. I don't know. My games weren't going that long, but they're. It feels like as long as it's something that's like pushing your game plan because you're so, invested in the quest line, it's hard to go wrong. I was running both Amulet and Feral Rage, and then also threw in like couple copies of Oracle so that I could get additional 0 mana minions. That felt a little bit clunky. I think you'd probably be better off with some of the Discover spells like whatever the Planted Evidence. I think that's probably a better option. And a lot of times it like the Oracle was just like needlessly making me hold cards in situations where I didn't need to, when cards in play better than cards in hand. That said, I didn't lose a single game because the deck is so busted.
All right. I do want to also throw out an idea for another non-questline Demon Hunter, or Druid deck, rather. For this that, want to branch out from not current wild decks. But I was trying out a version of Token Druid. I sadly playing 2 mana Gibberling instead of 1, but doing some shenanigans with like innervating and funnel cakes, which is actually like really spicy with Gibberling. And it did really well. It lost a lot to Questline Demon Hunter, but outside of that, like it did really, really well. And so we assume that deck might not be a thing for forever. I wanted to shout out Token Druid because you still have like the Arbor Up Shell, you have Fungal Fortunes, you still have all your mana with Innervates and Lightning Blooms. You can play Resizing Pouches, you still have Nature Studies, you have Funnel Cakes, so you have a lot of mana cheat. You still have like some of the super powerful things that Token Druid gets to do. You don't get Mark of the Lotus, which was like the big knock, but like you got Herald of Nature, and you have a bunch of other cards to go with it. So I just wanted to shout out that deck. I hadn't seen many people talking about it. All right, let's talk about Hunter. I think Hunter is the class I think struggles a lot with the whole no neutral 1-drop thing, because Hunter early game seems to be severely lacking. It's got like the standard mid game, right, with the Beast and Star Power, and you have Tavish legal still. You even have maybe something going on with Guardian Animals, but it's really struggling to not like do nothing in the early game, if that makes sense.
I mean, I was hearing a lot of rumblings about how good Questline Hunter was going to be, because everybody knows how strong. Like, no, it doesn't have rapid fire, which is a huge loss. It also, like, again, I hate to be that guy, but you're comparing a deck that is like completely absent from the wild format to two of the best decks in the wild format. It's not going to be able to keep pace even without losing as many cards as it has to like Questline and Druid and Demon Hunter. So I'm sure it'll be like borderline playable. Maybe even one of the better options for Hunter. I haven't looked at the spell pool that clearly, but like it's like the same deck as Questline Druid, but like with a bad matchup into Questline Druid and a lot worse into everything else. So I don't know how the deck wins.
Yeah, I expect it to be very bad. I think the card quality actually looks so high when you look at it, but the meta is just brutal. Like, it's just the slowest, well, not the actual slowest, but one of the slowest combo decks,
Right.
Questline decks. So it's going to be like 0100 into Poison Rogue. It's going to be like 0100 into Questline Druid. It's going to be unfavored against, well, I guess with DH you can probably play the Poison Spines card, but maybe that helps, but whatever, it's going to be bad.
But then you're playing that card.
Right, that's the major downside of that card, is that you have to actually put it in your deck.
And that comes with its own problems.
Yeah. Hey, you could play Kolkar Pack Runner in your Quest Hunter, and you could play Resizing Pouch, and then you always get Serpent Bloom. And so that's your way to deal with brutes. No.
Double mana burn?
Okay, well, nothing beats double mana burn. If they have just one, maybe you get there. Okay.
Maybe. Face Hunter, might be one of the better aggro options because Scav Walper is still okay, but probably not. Like, and it's also very sad for aggro if that's what we're talking about.
Right.
So yeah, I think Hunter's in probably going to be one of the weakest classes for sure.
Yeah.
You also kind of lose some of the with that deck in particular. You kind of want the neutrals, like the scale, the one mana Naga, so that you can get the bunch of bananas going on that. Like those are some of the big payoffs that are possible with that deck. So yeah, I don't know. Hunter doesn't seem to be in the best place in terms of competitive viability. There's probably some fun things that you can do with like the Jungle Jammer is. I haven't looked at the beast pool, but like there might be some interesting hits that you could get off of that. Maybe pretty reliably get a Mukla off of that at 6. So that could be interesting if you get a 4 mana rushing Mukla with no like downside. That could be
pretty good.
An interesting idea. Throw that around with like a Stranglethorn Heart, and maybe you've got something that resembles a deck. But again, I haven't looked at the beast pool, but like that's something that you can consider with the small number of beasts that are available in the format.
Yeah, I mean, I will say like probably just taking kind of the standard list for Hunter and adding stuff like Harpoon Gun and Tavish to that deck is probably not a bad shout. Obviously, we're talking about, Druid and Demon Hunter would probably not be very kind for that deck, but I do think that that's like probably the most competitive option for Hunter. I was really interested in the early game, and then you're sitting there and you're like, okay, I have to play Baddie Guest as my 1-drop, and then when you're talking about Baddie Guest, it's just like, don't really know if that's that great of an option. All right, let's pivot to Mage here. So we've talked a little bit about Primordial Studies being pretty good. So I wanted to start by talking about kind of like a Burn Mage / Spell Damage Mage. I don't really know what to call it. Basically, I mean, you get all Solid Alibis. You can copy your Solid Alibis. You get a bunch of spell damage, and then you do the whole original Freeze Mage thing of play spell damage minion, throw like 2 Frozen Touches and 3 Arcane Bolts at your face, and you die. Again, probably not the greatest deck against Questline Demon Hunter and Questline Druid, which I think we will say probably a lot for a lot of these decks that we talk about in Theorycraft, but it does seem like that's a deck that has some legs and something that did really well for me during Theorycrafting. Whole caveat of being a Theorycrafting stream, but something that I'm excited to flesh out some more.
Like that's one to Corb's earlier point where maybe it is just kind of fine into the Demon Hunter deck. Like it's gonna get obliterated by Druid just because the armor gain, it'll be like the the old Control Warrior, but I guess flipped. And like, but Demon Hunter, like if it, I don't know how many freezes it has, but it's like Flurry. It can just kind of, it has Varden. It can really just stop those big threats in their tracks, or just clear them, and like it does have limited threats. So maybe that's just a fine matchup, and maybe like exposes what Corb was saying earlier, where Questline Demon Hunter just isn't as good as we're anticipating. Maybe because it has matchups like that where Solid Alibi is devastating for that deck, as well as the freezes. So just freeze a bit and then send some damage over the top, and maybe you get there.
Mage is probably the most interesting class in terms of deck building. There'll be sort of overlapping archetypes from the past year or two of standard. They share a ton of the card pool. The old like Frost aggro is very similar to the current Burn Mage in standard. Like you get Primal, Frost Dungeoneer. Sorry, not Primal. This Frost Dungeoneer. And that package, but there's also the entire hero power package as well. And Varden is one of the best kind of like late game lethality things that you have, like inevitability, and so is like Mordrash. So I think Mage is in a interesting spot. It wouldn't shock me if it was one of the better classes. But I honestly have no idea which direction it'll go. Like I think it has a lot of cool deck building choices.
Yeah, there's I mean in standard a lot of those archetypes kind of blended together for a while. Even like a big spell mage worked its way in there, and like it was very fluid just because there's a lot of high quality cards available to mage that were like somehow synergistic with with one another in a way that was a little surprising, where archetypes just kind of blended. And I think you could see something similar in Wild. I agree, it's probably in a pretty good place, but might take potentially the full month to sort out in terms of refinement. So I think that's what, like, I think mage may be the class most open to exploration within it. So like, yeah, there are a lot of pretty cool possibilities within it. Just none of them seem all that appealing to queue into Druid is I guess my concern, because it doesn't have a whole lot of face freezes.
Yeah, there's a lot of hype about Mazaki. Pocket Train came on, there's like popped off with like 14-1 with Mazaki Mage. Best deck in the format, guys? Mazaki Mage?
Is Wild saved? I mean, sorry, is Twist saved?
I mean, I was thinking about it and I'm like, oh no, that's silly. But then I thought about it more and I'm like, well, Solid Alibi is kind of brutal for Questline Druid and Questline Demon Hunter, as we talked about. Armor isn't really a concern when you're doing as much damage as it's capable of. If it can stall long enough, maybe it is competitive against it. Like, just because of the way the damage is going, like a lot, it has a solid alibi against Weapon Rogue as well. Maybe it just kind of gets there. Like, I don't know. I haven't played enough of it. Pocket Train is also a unique individual when it comes to combo decks, so like his experience is going to be different than the average ladder gamer. But like, I don't know. It has a lot of tools to the point where you can just kind of like not even bother counting and just start throwing stuff upstairs and get some wins. Like the new arcane spells and the like arcane bolts and the arcane bolt generators can really do quite a lot. You also have siphon mana to get some cost reduction, as well as biscuit. Like, cram session, like you're kind of cooking with that deck. If you can survive long enough, you can do the damage to kill Questline Druid, I think.
Yeah, I think Mazaki is an incredible jank killer because it's basically like a guaranteed kill on 8. And you also have like alibis before that. Like as long as you get like a flow down early enough, you kind of just like OTK people turn 8 like every time. The question is like, can you get there with a 4-mana flow? Like, do you have the flow on curve? Do you have the alibis when they need it? Do you have like yada yada yada? In a format that is much more cutthroat. So like, I don't know. I don't know if it'll like will it handle getting glided by a demon hunter very well?
Ooh,
that seems unpleasant.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think we'll have to see. Like, I don't think it'll be... It's probably, like, better than I gave it credit for in the pre-release stream. Like, I will say that much. I don't expect it to be, like, one of the best decks, but if it's settled into, like, tier 3 or whatever, I wouldn't be shocked at all.
Yeah, and, it does have another kink in that, like, it can't run Talon to consistently draw the Mazaki, so, like, Mazaki bottom 10 or so is the only way I was able to beat the deck with like pure paladin. So like, I think that it doesn't draw a whole lot if you don't have the Mazaki, because you need the Mazaki for the cram session, and if it doesn't get the Mazaki, it can't Mazaki anyone.
Yeah, you guys are talking about this, and all I can think about is 4-mana flow and 5-mana spring water, and like, thank God they didn't unnerf those. So
I guess we know why.
Man, grow up. That should have happened. We all know it.
No, it should not have.
I do want to shout out a couple other things, Jank and Mage. So of course, I think Roffle, you alluded to this earlier. Drakefire Amulet. You only have one dragon in Mage, which is the Hala, which is the Flamewaker on steroids. And you do have a minion to help cheat out that Drakefire Amulet. It's like a 7-mana 4/5. Clumsy Courier, I believe, is the name.
Yeah.
It says Battle Cry, cast the highest cost spell from your hand. So you probably play that for 7 mana. Maybe you have some biscuits in there. Do a little bit of pew. So it's cute. It's probably going to be like, where's Mazaki Mage? I know we just like pivoted from talking about that. Seems a little bit more inconsistent, but also pretty fun. And then the other one is we've talked a lot about Discover Pools being a lot better because you don't have all the garbage spells from the beginning of Hearthstone. Can I interest Roffle in a Deck of Lunacy and Matter Reshaper style of Casino Mage? Because I feel like the quality of spells are just going to be a lot higher.
They would be if I didn't generate a bunch of Glacial Mysteries while I was doing that because of the card pool bug. Yeah, and going back to the Drakefire Amulet, if you're actually a skilled gamer, you simply reduce the cost of Drakefire Amulet with Celestial Ink Set. That's what happened to me.
This sounds like a real deck.
There are actually ways that, because with Siphon Mana and with the biscuits, you can like reduce the cost of your other spells to 0, and then you can more reliably make it hit. So I think that there is some potential to like actually get a consistent hit off of the ink set, but I don't know, but probably better than a 7 mana clumsy Courier or whatever that is, because then you're running that card in your deck.
I will warn people about this Discover Pool. We've talked a lot about its benefits, but I was playing against Hobbs, and he was playing Jackpot Rogue, and he played Jackpot, and he got his Drakefire, and he confidently played out the 4 mana 2/2 with his Drakefire, and then the game kind of paused for a bit because nothing happened because Rogue doesn't have any dragons. So that was really amazing when that happened.
Yeah,
not for Hobbs, but
you would think it would like kind of like with like discovering secrets in a class without secrets, it would just give you the class card, but that might actually be a legitimate concern if it did do right, that, yeah. Because like getting a turn 4 Hala in Rogue is probably not something that we need in this world.
Yeah, I don't know. That was like reported to the team. They said they were gonna address it. I don't know what that means. Maybe they'll just like put a note or something, or they might give Hala and Rogue on turn 3 and turn 4, which would be kind of spooky. We'll see what happens, but be wary of that. I don't think we need to spend too much time on Paladin, because Pure Paladin / Libram Paladin, they are decks. I would expect Pure Paladin to be better than Libram Paladin. I said they're decks. I didn't say they would be good decks, but they are decks. As much as the standard players would like you to freak out about Pure Paladin, don't. You got bigger things to worry about. Pure Paladin, not one of them.
I do think that there is the potential to build Libram Paladin in such a way that it like has a competitive matchup into Questline Druid. So like it could be a bit of a spoiler into Questline Druid's dominance, but then like, good decks tend to be about 30-35% of a metagame. You still have to figure out a way to win those other 65-70% of the games, which in my experience, Libram Paladin not its strong suit is winning games in a lot of these matchups. Like it has no chance against a Mizaki Mage, it has no chance against maybe it could do something against a Weapon Rogue if that also ends up being popular. So like it has ways that it can be built with like all the Divine Shield taunts at its disposal that could be competitive with those decks, or maybe like spoil some of those decks in terms of the win rate, but then you still have to beat the rest of the format.
I feel bad for Paladin because I'm rooting against it. I am absolutely hoping Paladin is tier 4 dumpster, because the worse it is, the funnier it is. The reaction to Pure Paladin on Reddit.
No, I'm 100% spitefully on board with you on that, and shamelessly so. I think it would be hilarious if it was just like I think it has the potential to be like a bottom half class, and probably won't just because of like low ranked play, but like at higher ranks I think it has potential to not be a top 4 or 5 class.
No, surely the boogie down on 3 and the Pure Paladin ends it against Questline Druid. Like all right. Let's talk about Priest. So we mentioned earlier Draconic Studies makes Dragon Priests like actually feel like a very strong avenue for Priest players to pursue, whether you're playing like I don't know what Priestess are going to play, but having Nether Drake, what is the name of this card again? 3 mana 4/4.
Nether Drake Lightmore, I think is right.
So whatever he said, if you have that on turn 3 every game, seems like it's going to be really powerful against the aggro decks that may or may not exist. I think that's kind of the big thing, because I don't think the 4/4 thing that Core mentioned, I don't think that does a whole lot against Quest Druid or Questline Demon Hunter, but seems like a very oppressive card against other board-based decks that may or may not exist.
All right, let me correct myself. It isn't Netherdrake Lightmoor. It is Lightmoor Netherdrake. So there we go.
That's embarrassing. Another thing that you do actually have access to is buffed Draconid Operative, like Yeti Operative. Like, why, just like any other priest, why win with your own cards when your opponent's cards are better because they're not priest cards? So you can simply steal them and play their deck and win that way.
Yeah. It still looks weird looking at an operative that's a 4-mana 4/5.
Priest card quality is super high, but we were talking about earlier about how like Quest Hunter was kind of in a very hostile environment for the deck. Control Priest is in hell. Like, this is just a torture chamber. The old Stormwind-esque format. There's so much inevitability. There's no disruption. Like, Control Priest is awesome at clearing aggro. It's just like, God, what are we doing here? What else can we do? So I think Control Priest like requires tons of bans / nerfs to actually be relevant, even if it can do some really cool, like powerful control stuff. And then Shadow Priest, probably one of the best aggro decks, which will make it pretty bad.
It looked pretty sad the few times I queued into it. One thing I will say about Control Priest, though, is it is an important facet for making Pure Paladin look really bad. So so we should be encouraging people to play Control Priest, not discouraging it.
Oh gosh, you guys are the
Maybe
worst.
people will just play it just for Demon Hunter. Even if they mana burn you, you Wave of Apathy, and then bam, you hit them with the Shadowwood Ruin. Like, that's the dream, right? It's just worrying about going 0-100 against Rogue, Quest Hunter, Quest Warlock, Quest Mezaki. A few problems, a few minor details.
Just details. I would also like to point out for the priest players that enjoy, doing fun things that don't win games. Sethic Nazmani combo is legal. You don't have Radiant Elemental, but you have Sethic and Nazmani, so I don't know what you're winning with.
You get funnel cakes. Funnel cakes now, Meowth, with it.
Yeah.
Insane.
Again, I don't know how you're winning because you don't have Malagos, you don't have Mind Blast, you don't have any of the WinCon things, but like you get to Sethic Nazmani, and that's why I preface the whole thing of doing fun things that might not win you the game. So
the deck didn't win. It didn't have like a coherent win condition when it was a meta deck and standard. Why would it need one now? Like,
that's fair.
It'll find a way, Meowth. It always does.
I will say the one thing I did see is I saw Dane playing Harvester of Envy and Elucia alongside the Sethic Nazmani. So you steal your opponent's hand and then play all of their cards, and so then they no longer have a hand. So that's how you win with Sethic Nazmani. I don't know how the hell you do that with mana and APM, but boom, there you go. So,
practice
or animation hacks, easy. Okay, so for Rogue, we've talked a lot about the weapon Rogue. Is there anything else you guys are excited for? We've got Cox, we've got SI7 Rogue. What is it? Find the Imposter questline. You have Record Scratcher and Field Contact and 4-mana Edwin. Is there anything you guys are excited about?
Secret Rogue ain't my grave.
Secret Rogue with no Mad Scientist or Anonymous Informant?
I don't care. Like, I'm just playing Ghastly Gravedigger on repeat with Breakdance and Shadow Steps and whatever the Tenwu, like,
and Bounce Around.
No, that's not a real card that exists in Hearthstone. Sorry. And I think Jackpot Rogue sounds fun as well. I think Rogue is like Mage has some interesting components to it, and then it has like that one toxic deck that it will probably be the thing that people play. So I think Rogue is one of the places that I'm most interested in exploring.
Yeah. Rogue Miracle stuff is kind of alright. I do think there's kind of like a Miracle Rogue problem where it doesn't have a safety win condition, without having like Astalor, without sort of what's his name, Draka being really consistent, I think. But you can do like big tempo swings with the Scratcher. So maybe you can just figure out a way to go face enough. I don't know. Maybe you play like Krabatoe and you just kind of just like chuck stuff at the opponent's head, and that's good enough. I don't know.
Can I interest you in an MC Blingtron double Garrote for a
You
whopping
cannot-
24
You
damage?
cannot interest me. No, you
No.
cannot interest me.
Nobody is interested in that. Meowth.
Look, how else are you going to kill people with Garrote and field contacts?
You're not. That's the fun part.
Yeah, fair enough. But I will agree with you guys. I think Rogue's got a lot of cute stuff going on. If you can just look past the blemish that is Weapon Rogue, because there's no real weapon hate in the format, unfortunately. All right, let's move into Shaman. We've talked a lot about Questline Shaman. Shoutouts to Charged Call, always finding you Glug on turn 7, always finding you the Lifesteal Taunt Reborn on 8, and always finding you the Wind Fury Legendary card on turn 9, which I think is pretty sweet. Outside of the whole winning the game with infinity damage, always having Glug is pretty sweet. So
Priorities.
We talked a little bit about primordial studies. I do need to try to convince Corb yet again about Custom Shaman 2, aka Evolve Shaman, because Bogspine Knuckles is legal. You have Cage Match Custodian, and you have Pack the House and Tiny Toys. It's just Tempo Shaman. It's not very good, but I don't know. I obviously the year crafting sample size, but I did go 11-2 with Evolve Shaman, so I think there's legs. I don't know how great it is, but it's really funny and it works good, like well enough of the time to be something that I'll be playing.
I will revisit Custom Shaman 2. You know what? You've convinced me. You've mentioned it enough. I don't know, the Knuckles and the Tiny Toys curve, like that's a thing. It's always powerful. Sure, why not?
All right, we did it, boys. We got it. He's gonna be playing some Evolve Shaman. I would also like one last note about Shaman. The dreaded combo of Snowfall and Macaw is technically legal in this format. I don't know how you win outside of the Snowfall Macaw, but it's legal, and I just wanted to put it out there in case anybody wants to trigger some PTSD of some standard players with infinite board freezes. Just putting that out there. All right, Warlock. Corb, I'm gonna let you go off with Questline Warlock because that's your baby, even if it's really bad.
Yeah, it's really bad. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the deck has just tons of AoE. Like, it has good tempo swings in the kind of mid to late game. The healing I think it's actually there. The healing. The problem is that you don't actually complete quests until like turn 9, turn 10, and you're dead. You're just dead. There's nothing. It's like, every problem that I talked about with Quest Hunter, it's like this, except 3 turns slower. So, like, you have great AoE. That's nice for the aggro that doesn't exist. But yeah, you have a lot of other problems. So, man, Warlock, oh boy. I guess Imp Warlock might actually be the best aggro deck. I will say that. So maybe it's not a complete disaster. But Questline Warlock, if anyone was worried about that, don't worry. They butchered that deck well and truly when they rotated it out to Wild and made it 10-10-10, because, God, they just did not want that to be even close to playable. So, well done, Team 5.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Team 5. Thank you.
And the deck, even when it's like gasping for breath in Wild, does win games a lot of times on the back of like crystallizer recursion, which is just not a possibility in a format without neutral. So like, yeah, how do you ever complete the quest? Unfortunately, the answer is you don't. Yeah. So.
Can I interest you guys? You mentioned all the great AoE. That's not really needed, but exist. Void Caller and some big demons are legal. With Mal'Ganis and Dreadlord and Willow is legal. Ticketus is legal. So you got those things. You also have curses that are legal as some potential win cons. Just throwing things out there for the Control Warlock aficionados out there.
I think curse has some potential, but like that wants to be a bit of a reactive deck. So like if there aren't a lot of board-based strategies, it's just going to be racing down combos, and that's not a good place for the deck to be.
Not
yeah, I have no faith whatsoever in anything that's slow. Kind of brutal.
Yeah, but Imp Block does get Wicked Whispers, which is, as small as it sounds, a huge buff for the token-based aggro deck. So I think the Imp Block shout-out is a good one. All right, last but not least, we have Warrior. Hey, Roffle, can I interest you in some questline Warrior? With
Nope.
no ships, cannon, or pirates or anything. It's bad. It's really bad. But can I interest
I
you in it?
No, I could have told you it was going to be bad. I did play a little bit of. I think there's maybe some interesting things you can do with Black Rock and Roll. Probably too slow. I played a little bit of Menagerie Warrior.
Menagerie Warrior without amalgams is a bold choice.
Wow,
You
very
do
brave.
you do have baton, and you can get tent dresses down very quickly. So you're just doing like a questline Demon Hunter impression, but worse. But I mean, the deck can get some stats in play pretty quickly, so it's maybe one of the better things that Warrior has available to it is just like, um, weapon generating minions. You have like the Gnarg to reduce the cost of your Abyssal Basis. That's kind of cute. In addition to the Sword Eater, and then Roaring Applause draws a bunch of cards, but like it's not as bad as it sounds. It's maybe a step or two below Evolved Shaman. How about that?
Custom Warrior 3. Hell of a deck.
You get to run conditioning, all right? I just wanted to play conditioning. I love that card.
Yeah.
You get to
I didn't
buff
really,
up a Rabble Bouncer. Oof.
I didn't really give Warrior a shot. Like it just didn't seem super powerful, whatever it had going on. But it probably won't be that bad. Like I'm sure, similar to how in Wild, like Menagerie Warrior and a Rage Warrior kind of like completely slept on, and players just aren't interested in trying them. I wouldn't be shocked if there was like a playable Warrior thing. Sure, I just don't think it's gonna get people too interested. Sadly.
The Warrior deck that's going to get people interested is Control Warrior. Because I mean, I think just like Priest, it's in a very similar situation as Control Priest, where it's got like really great removal. It just like has no way to win the game or outlast the inevitability of the quest lines. Because I was sitting there, I was like, man, is the only way that I'm going to win this game by unironically playing a Radical in my deck? And kind of the answer was, yeah, which is not a good thing. But you have like the access of like all the great removal that's been printed over the past 4 years, like Blade Storms and Shield Slams and Executes, and you have Barov, you have 1-mana Slam, you have 2-mana Shield Block. Like you have all that good removal. You have Shield Shatter, you have all of that, but like you have no way to win the game, which is a thing.
Again, another deck that could definitely beat the Demon Hunter, maybe, but it's just the other 90% of games that you have to worry about.
I wonder about Enrage Warrior. Like I don't know the standard list too well, but like how much of that like ports, like how much of that is neutrals, I guess is my question.
You get the bulk of it, like you lose Foul Egg, but I'm pretty sure the majority of cards are still all class cards that come over. Yeah.
So just no Risk Escaper still, but
You also, I think you get the 1-mana Frenzy guy, which is kind of nifty.
oh, the Warsong dude.
Yeah, so he's not terrible. So like that, it gives you an extra early game play, and that guy can, like, if you manage to get your pseudo skippers active, that guy can do some serious work.
All right. So that's all the classes. This is obviously just early impressions. Don't know when the set's going or the format's going live. I guess I should say it's weird saying a new format going live rather than a new set. But hopefully, the talk of the early parts of the episode didn't turn people off, and you guys are excited for the format. I know that I'm going to be playing it a bunch this week, even if it does feel like it's going to be a little bit Wild 2.0 at the start here.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to be playing it a fair amount. I don't know. I want the format to be successful, despite what coming off maybe a little critical at the beginning. I really do want it to be successful because I do see a lot of great potential for the format. I just, have some legitimate concerns about it as well. So hopefully, I am overstating the problems, and it will be better than I'm expecting, and if not, hopefully the upcoming seasons will resonate a little bit more with me, and people will give it a chance.
And Meowth, you did say like you're not used to saying new formats at a new set, but we did get the expansion teaser on Twitter today.
I was gonna lead to that to wrap us up.
All right.
We are recording on Monday night, and like 2 hours before, or like 3 hours before we started doing all this, we got a teaser, and it is kind of that time of the expansion cycle where we get hints, and like probably I wouldn't be surprised if we got an announcement whenever we get the patch and we get kind of the pre-order bundles get revealed and everything like that. So I would not be very surprised to see that coming in the same patch as Twist, whether that's tomorrow or Thursday. So
yeah, that would make a lot of sense. So a lot of news, a lot of big stuff happening in Hearthstone this week, it seems like.
Yeah. All right, I will ask you guys, did you guys have any idea what that spoiler meant?
No.
I think I'm the only one in this group that played any amount of WoW, and my experience with WoW was just immediately closing all dialogue and powering through the quest so that I could actually get to the PvP. Like I just wanted to do PvP. I didn't want to like learn about the lore. So I've got nothing.
I will say I played a whole 1 hour of WoW when I was trying to get the Lady Leodrin Paladin skin, where you had to do the tutorial. I couldn't even get to to level 20. So if that tells you how much.
Oh, come on. It's not that bad, man. I enjoyed it.
I still don't have her. I just don't want to get hooked again is my issue.
Really? You're like staying away as like self-control,
Yeah, I just don't have it's not like cosmetics aren't important to me, and she doesn't say well met in a funny voice, and then
it's too much risk.
Yeah, and I just like I don't want to get
not again.
Not again. I've lived that life already.
Good.
Oh yeah, I think there's something like I don't know the WoW lore, but whatever. It's something to do with people figured out the language. I think it's something to do with the Titans, the dwarf stuff.
Yeah, Titans are dwarves. I think Old You Are or Oldman, I think, are a lot of people's guesses, but people have also had that guess pretty much. Came up in my chat this morning, but pretty much every expansion since Nax has been predicted to be Old You Are or Oldham. So who knows? We'll just. I'm just happy to wait and see. We'll wait and see.
Yeah. Hopefully, we won't have to wait super long. I have seen some devs giving some winky faces to tweets about locations, so I think locations might be making their way back in to whatever the new set is in some capacity. So keep an eye out on that, and yeah, let us know down in the comments below what you guys think the new set's going to be. If you guys are listening to this before whatever the announcement is, we don't know when that's going to be. But also let us know your thoughts on Twist, and whether you guys are hyped, whether you guys are scared, whether you guys are looking forward to it, whether this season or next. Let us know your thoughts on Twist, down in the comments. And yeah, Corb and Roffle, thanks for joining me. Let the people know where they can find you guys, doing the Twist when the format comes out.
You can find me on Twitch and YouTube at Roffle.
And you can also find me at Corbett on Twitch or Corbettgames on YouTube and Twitter.
And you guys can find me at Get Me Out on all those platforms. We're going to be continuing to cover Wild and Twist, covering both formats. All non-standard constructed formats is what we're going to cover here on the State of Wild Twist. I don't know. We might have to rebrand.
The rebrand.
You just said it. The state of non-standard constructed formats.
Rolls right off the tongue.
I know.
No, but make sure you guys tune back in if you guys enjoy Wild or Twist. But that's gonna be it for us today, and we will see you guys again next time. Later.